For centuries, Japan had warriors who trained for death every day, not only on battlefields, but inside their own minds. Every morning, samurai imagined dying. They imagined arrows entering their bodies. They imagined falling beneath enemy swords. They imagined losing everything they loved. To us, this sounds disturbing, but to the samurai, it was training. Because they believed one thing deeply: fear becomes powerful when you avoid it, and death was the greatest fear. So they faced it before battle. They faced it before sunrise. They faced it inside silence. This was not a strange obsession. This was not a desire to die. It was a way to live fearlessly. But to understand this practice, we must first understand the samurai. The samurai were not ordinary soldiers. They were Japan's warrior class. For centuries, they served powerful lords. These lords were called daimyo. Japan was not always united. For long periods, different clans fought. Power shifted between families and warlords. Land was protected through armed loyalty. A lord needed warriors he could trust, not men who collapsed under fear. He needed men trained for death. That is how samurai became important. They were trained to protect their lord. They fought for land, power, and honor. Their weapons became famous across history: the bow, the spear, and the sword. But the sword became their symbol. The katana was not only metal. It represented duty, discipline, and identity. A samurai did not see himself as a normal man with weapons. He saw himself as a servant of duty. His life belonged to something larger: his clan, his lord, his name, his honor. This is where samurai life becomes different. Modern people often protect comfort first. The samurai were taught to protect honor first. From childhood, this idea was planted. A samurai boy did not grow gently. He was trained before he understood life. He learned to ride horses, learned to use the bow. He learned to handle weapons. He learned posture, manners, and silence. He was taught to control emotion. Pain was not treated as unusual. Fear was not treated as shameful. But surrendering to fear was dangerous, because one frightened warrior could destroy an entire formation. One moment of panic could expose his lord. One hesitation could cost many lives. So, samurai training was never only physical. It was mental conditioning from childhood. The child had to become steady. He had to watch without shaking. He had to listen without reacting. He had to move without panic. Because Japan's old battlefields were brutal. There were no safe distances. There were no gentle defeats. A sword fight was close and personal. A warrior saw the enemy's face. He saw blood, pain, and terror. He heard horses, arrows, and screams. In such a world, fear was natural, but fear had to be mastered. This is where Bushido entered samurai life. Bushido means the way of the warrior. It was not one simple rulebook. It was a moral world, a way to judge life and death. Bushido valued loyalty, courage. Bushido valued self-control, valued honor above comfort. A samurai was expected to obey duty, even when duty was painful, even when duty was dangerous, even when duty demanded sacrifice. People often ask one question: will this make me happy? But the samurai asked something different: will this preserve my honor? That question shaped their entire life. Because honor was not private emotion. Honor was public identity. Your name carried your family's reputation. Your conduct reflected your ancestors. Your courage protected your descendants. A samurai did not live alone. He lived inside a chain of duty. If he behaved with cowardice, the shame did not stop with him. It touched his house, his family, his lord. It touched everyone who carried his name. That is why honor mattered deeply. To lose honor was not small failure. It was a kind of social death. People might remember your disgrace long after your body disappeared. In that world, shame could outlive death. That is why many samurai feared dishonor more than the battlefield itself. Death could end pain, but dishonor could poison memory. This belief created extreme courage, but it also created extreme pressure. A samurai had to appear ready. Ready to fight, ready to obey, ready to lose everything, ready to die without begging. This is why samurai culture developed practices that shock us today. One of those practices was seppuku. Seppuku was ritual self-disembowelment. It is often misunderstood today. To modern people, It looks horrifying, and it was horrifying, but inside samurai culture, it carried a different meaning. It was connected to honor, punishment, protest, loyalty, and responsibility. A defeated samurai might choose seppuku instead of capture and humiliation. A disgraced samurai might choose it to restore family honor. A loyal retainer might perform it ailing his lord. This was not ordinary suicide. It was a ritualized death inside a strict honor culture. It showed that the samurai valued honor even above physical survival. Again, this does not mean we should romanticize everything. Samurai life was harsh. Their code could be cruel. Their world accepted violence that modern society must reject. But if we want to understand them, we must enter their mental world. For them, fear of death was not the greatest problem. Fear of living without honor was even more dangerous. This belief shaped their minds deeply. Then another influence entered samurai culture. Zen Buddhism. Zen taught silence, discipline, direct experience, impermanence. Everything changes. Everything passes. Everything you hold can disappear at any moment. For a warrior, this idea was powerful. Because battle teaches impermanence brutally. A strong man can fall instantly. A great plan can collapse suddenly. A peaceful morning can become death. Zen did not remove danger, but it taught the warrior to stop fighting reality. The sword had to move now. The mind had to remain present. There was no time for endless fear or imagination. A distracted mind could die quickly. A panicked mind could move wrongly. A clinging mind could hesitate. So Zen helped the samurai train attention in the present. Not yesterday's regret, not tomorrow's fear, only this moment, this breath, this movement, this decision. This is why meditation mattered. It was not just spiritual decoration. It was preparation for uncertainty. And from this world came the most unsettling samurai practice, meditating on death. Some samurai texts openly spoke about keeping death in mind. One famous samurai idea says the way of the warrior is death. That sentence sounds dark, but its meaning is more subtle. It does not mean rush toward death. It means stop being controlled by it, because fear often grows from what we refuse to face. If a warrior constantly avoids death, death controls his imagination. He begins protecting himself too much. He begins hesitating before action. He begins calculating safety first, and on a battlefield, that hesitation can destroy him. So, the samurai reversed the process. Instead of avoiding death, they imagined it clearly. They imagined dying by arrows, dying by swords. They imagined drowning in rivers. They imagined being surrounded by enemies. They imagined losing status and family. They imagined the worst outcome first, not to become hopeless, but to become free. Because once the worst was accepted, ordinary fear became smaller. If death was already accepted inside the mind, then pain lost some power, threats lost some power, insults lost some power, uncertainty lost some power. A warrior who accepted death could act without desperate clinging. This is the hidden psychological logic. People think courage means never feeling fear, but samurai thinking was different. Courage was acting correctly while fear was present. Fear may enter the body, but it must not rule behavior. The samurai did not remove fear. They removed fear's authority. That is a very different thing, and this is why their stories still survive in history. Take Miyamoto Musashi. He became one of Japan's most famous swordsmen. Musashi fought many duels. He wandered through Japan. He studied strategy, timing, and perception. But Musashi was not only a fighter, he became a thinker of combat. He understood that victory was not only about strength, it was about mind, distance, timing, calmness, reading the enemy, controlling yourself before controlling others. His life shows one deep truth. The greatest swordsman is not merely faster, he is less disturbed. He sees clearly when others become emotional. He waits when others rush. That is the samurai ideal at its highest level. Not wild aggression, not blind anger, but deadly calm. Another famous story is the 47 Ronin. Their lord was forced to die. They became masterless samurai. In Japanese society, this was a deep disgrace, but they did not react immediately. They waited. They hid their intention. They endured suspicion and humiliation. For nearly 2 years, they prepared their revenge. When the moment finally came, they acted with discipline, Their story became legendary because it combined loyalty, patience, sacrifice, and death. Whether we agree with their actions is not the main point. The deeper point is this: their culture admired people who placed duty above survival. The samurai world believed life without loyalty was empty, life without honor was broken, life without courage was incomplete. This is why death meditation made sense. It supported the entire structure. If death is not accepted, loyalty has limits. If death is not accepted, courage becomes conditional. If death is not accepted, honor becomes negotiable. So, samurai culture pushed one idea: prepare yourself before the crisis arrives. Do not wait for fear to attack you untrained. Do not wait for battle to discover your mind is weak. Train before life tests you. This is where the samurai practice becomes psychologically powerful. Today, people do not fight with swords on battlefields, but fear still controls lives. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of losing status, and most people handle fear by avoiding it. They avoid honest self-examination. They avoid anything that threatens identity. But avoidance has a hidden cost. The more you avoid fear, the larger it becomes. A small fear becomes a wall. A possible failure becomes a monster. The samurai understood this pattern. They saw that fear grows in the darkness of avoidance. So, they dragged fear into awareness. They looked directly at death. They mentally rehearsed loss. They accepted impermanence. They practiced emotional surrender before physical danger arrived. We can understand one powerful principle: what you refuse to face quietly becomes your master. If you refuse failure, failure controls you. If you refuse criticism, criticism controls you. If you refuse discomfort, discomfort controls you. If you refuse uncertainty, uncertainty controls you. The samurai faced death because death was their greatest fear. People must face whatever fear controls them most. For some it is failure, loneliness. For some it is rejection, humiliation, change. For some, it is truth itself. The object has changed, but the psychology remains similar. Fear becomes smaller when reality is faced directly. That is why this ancient practice still feels strangely relevant. A samurai imagining death was not trying to become sad. He was trying to become free. Free from the fear that breaks people at crucial moments. Because in the final moment, a warrior had only himself, only his trained mind, his breath, his decision, and his courage. That is why samurai practiced death before death appeared, because it reveals something uncomfortable about the human mind. We are not controlled only by what happens to us, we are controlled by what we are afraid to face. The samurai understood this centuries ago. A person who faces fear begins to recover inner freedom. That was the hidden purpose behind the samurai's darkest ritual. They practiced death every day, so fear would not own their life. If this changed your perception on fears of life, let us know in comments. Consider subscribing for more wisdom.